For more than 2 decades, I have written in a diary almost every single day. And guess what? I saved them all. Each week, I will be reading from these archives and getting to know myself from the lens of my 10, 16, 25, and 36-year-old self. We'll explore big topics such as body image, queerness, divorce, addiction, mental health, and friendship. I'll read cringy poems and attempt to find compassion for the painful tenderness of my younger self. Join the drama of me and my guests as we explore our boy-crazy, closeted, angsty selves, one stupid page at a time. Hello, beautiful humans. How is everybody doing out there? I am having a bit of a morning. Technology is just hating on me for the last week or two. If you're like thinking about Mercury retrograde and all that stuff, I'm with you. And also, I think this is beyond Mercury retrograde, to be honest. It started with how did it start? It started with my laptop. I have been ignoring the sad state of affairs that is my laptop for the last, I was going to say 6 months, but I think it's closer to a year and a half. Basically to use my laptop, which is how I do all of my business and all of my podcast recording and most of my life. I had to prop it up on several books. My father sort of jimmy-rigged a duct tape contraption so that I could keep it plugged in because my laptop doesn't operate unless it's plugged in, but it only charges if it's at a very certain angle. And I also my camera only worked if my laptop was kind of at a very certain angle. Basically, it's a laptop I probably had for close to 10 years, if not longer. And it was on its way out into, the laptop graveyard. And I've just been avoiding getting myself a new one and avoiding until I couldn't avoid anymore. So that was the first thing. I am coming at you from my brand new laptop today, which feels really exciting. Then the very next day, my cell phone charger, which was also held together by duct tape, I'm admitting now to myself and you, my cell phone charger stopped working. And it was no mystery why. It was all frayed inside. And so I get a new cell phone charger. Then I realized that one of the issues that I've been having lately finally got to me, which was that my internet provider just isn't very good. And so I did a bunch of research. I decided to get some new internet. And today is my first day using my new internet, and it's having all kinds of problems. So basically, I don't know, the universe just doesn't really want me to record a podcast, but I'm going to anyways, because I miss you all. And I've been getting so much awesome feedback on the last couple episodes. I have a very special treat. Later today, I'm actually recording with a brand new guest, somebody that I met through Substack just because I started subscribing to her Substack, found out we had a lot in common. She has very recently published a book that I am thrilled to read, and I'm going to be interviewing her later, so stay tuned. I'll probably be releasing that episode in the next week or two. It's going to be awesome. Crossing all my fingers and toes that my internet holds up. So I'm going to be reading from the next journal in the order that I've been reading. I won't lie, the last couple of episodes that I have recorded have been actually really challenging. One thing that's been amazing is some of the feedback that I've gotten from listeners saying that they really have related to a couple of stories that I've told. One of my sexual assault, the second story that I kind of told last episode about a sexual experience I had with someone who was a lot older than me. In hindsight, I didn't realize that he was so much older than me. And the positive spin is that a lot of y'all have reached out and told me that my podcast matters to you, that you're listening, that you're loving it, that you can relate, that you have a lot of empathy for this 14, 15-year-old version of me. The hard part is just kind of reliving some of these moments and experiencing some of these traumas again. And after the last episode, I had a very big cry. I was lucky because my partner was with me at the time, and I started sharing with him like how hard that podcast was for me. And then I started crying, and then it just really quickly turned into like a very important, ugly cry, because the thing that I kept repeating was just like, it's not fair. Like, it's not fair that happened to me. And so I've been struggling with that. I've been struggling, I think I feel taken advantage of by some of the older boys in my life. I mean, I am a very young teenage girl. I think I just got my period a couple years before this. I am flat-chested. I am a tomboy. I am pure and innocent, and my body's been taken advantage of, not once but twice. I thought that is what this next journal was going to be about, and it does touch on it a little bit, but I think the subtext of this journal is actually about my parents. My parents are having a really hard time, and like, spoiler alert, my mom is just a few months away from leaving my dad. But their marriage is in very big trouble at this point in the journey. And so I bring that up a lot. And it's definitely a big source of stress for me and a big source of worry and anxiety. It feels like my whole life is changing and kind of crumbling. And I'm still just like being a teenager and going to parties. In this diary as well, I am very caught in that place that, if you've been with me for a while, you've seen me be caught in for some time now, which is this land between being a like child who is just walking around town and eating candy and laughing with friends and being silly. And I'm also dipping a toe into the world of like young adulthood and getting into trouble and smoking a lot of weed and drinking and partying with people much older than me. And I'm really like, honestly, I feel like I am straddling the equator of these two places, and one side is pulling on one arm and the other side is pulling on the other arm. And I have a desire to stay a child, but also I can't wait to grow up. And then I'm constantly disappointed by the grown-ups in my life, so then I want to be a child again. And I'm resentful at the fact that I have to grow up. It's a real just inner turmoil, conflicty thing. And it comes out even more in this journal. So in this journal, I start on June 19th, 2003. It's actually my sister's birthday. And I've just turned, or I'm like 15 and a half at this point, just to give you a little reference point. All right, let's get into it. All right. After a few more exams are out of the way, summer will finally be here. This weekend may as well start it. We're having a birthday bash for Genevieve. I guess I'll miss some people from school. I can always get together with Mavis and Graham and Cassie, Amanda, Bush, and Shannon. And I'll miss some people like Clayton and Amanda and Jeff and Brad and Ben. I'll miss Corey too. I wanted to stop liking him a long time ago so I wouldn't have to miss him over the summer. Sighs. There's a lot of that in this journal. Sigh. Hopefully I make progress with Corey throughout this time. Who knows, maybe this summer I'll meet a perfect boy and forget all about Corey. Ha, yeah, right. So, Corey. Don't have to tell you that this is my crush. I'm not going to spoil it for you. We'll see. We'll see what happens. The saga of Corey has just begun. The next day, I wrote about Corey some more. I said, I hung outside with Corey and Ben. Corey told me how much he liked my Bob Marley t-shirt. We talked about the summer. He gave me a hug. Smiley face. Corey is ... Corey is a lot of things to me. He's motivation. He's the reason for my smiles. He's the last thing I think about before sleeping. He's the boy I have had a crush on since September. He's gorgeous and funny and intriguing. He's also confusing. I'm really insecure of me and him. But maybe that's half the fun. So, yeah, I am crushing hard for this boy. And it's June, so this is my first full year of grade 9. And I have been into him since September. So kind of all year I've been kind of chasing him and we've become friends also. And the high school I went to wasn't huge. You know, my grade 9 class probably had maybe like 100 or maybe 2. I actually don't know, but it wasn't a huge school. So you knew most people in your grade. And yeah, so we were friends. We were friendly, at least. And I think he knew that I liked him, and he liked to have the attention, and he liked to flirt with me, and I liked to flirt back. And we had this kind of like, will they, won't they thing. But ultimately, I just really worried and felt like he didn't really like me. And I wouldn't become sure for a long time whether he did or he didn't. But that is going to be a repeated theme in this particular journal. So buckle up. Now, if you've been following my journey for a while, you know that I very rarely have just one boy or girl on my mind. And at the end of my last episode, I shared that I don't know what to call it. I was just going to say hooked up, but that's not really what it felt like. Like I said, I entered into a sexual dynamic, making out with this guy that I have been calling Jay. And he was 19 and I was 14. And I also shared at the beginning of this episode that I had a pretty big cry about that and felt like I had been taken advantage of. Go listen to the episode before this, and I'm sure you'll see what I'm talking about. But in that episode, I said something along the lines of, you know, after we had this makeout, and I said, not reading from my diary, but I said out loud to the listeners, I said, and that was like the only time we ever did anything, because that's what I thought happened. That in my memory, that is what happened. But on June 21st, I write, Man, I hate to start a book off with a big controversy. So maybe this isn't a big controversy and I'm just making it out to be, but me and Jay hooked up again last night. It wasn't how you'd think. It wasn't how you'd think. It was, well, obviously I was going to stay at his house. He offered and I was cold and tired. We had been sitting outside talking. He told me about his dreams and things that scared him. And I stayed with him because I knew he didn't want to be alone. So we watched some TV, joked around, made each other smile. He said, I've been thinking a lot and I think maybe it's time I give you a chance. You know, I always thought him saying that to me would answer my prayers, but for some reason, him saying that to me made my head spin. But he kissed me, and even though I was thinking of Corey, I kissed him back. I should have told him that while he was off being with someone else, that I had moved on to other things with the name of Corey. I became passionate about someone else. I should have told him all of that and more. I should have said it, but I guess I didn't want to hurt him. So, a little bit of people-pleasing going on here. And I didn't actually write about anything more about us hooking up. And I have to imagine it was just like a makeout session with maybe some heavy petting. I think there's a reason I didn't write about it because I was feeling like pretty uncomfortable about the whole thing. And yeah, I would say it's been challenging to go back to this memory, mostly because I'm realizing like, hey, Yoda, you remembered this wrong. And that's like a really strange, in my head, it was always like, we only kissed once. We kissed that night and we both knew it was wrong. And then we never did anything about it again. A couple weeks later, there's an entry where I'm writing about, you know, my weekend and a party that we went to, and I said, and then I was with Jay. Sigh. We went out for a walk to the bench outside his house. He told me that he still has feelings for Kay. That was another girl that he was into. And I know he does because I still see him look at her the same way. I told him stuff too, how much she hurt me and that sorries don't matter. We eventually went inside and he tried to kiss me a few times, many times. Every single time I pulled back. And it's not because I was thinking of Corey. Well, it's not just because I was thinking of Corey. And it's not because he's 19. Well, it's not just because he's 19. It's not because this would screw everything up in our friendship. Well, it's not just because of that. It's just because in that moment, kissing him is not what I wanted to do. I feel frustrated and disappointed that he tried so many times. It was incredibly awkward. And all I wanted to do was leave the party. I mean, good for 14, 15-year-old me for identifying. I felt frustrated and disappointed. Yeah, I'm feeling that now in this moment of reading. I have goosebumps all over my skin and not the good kind. The kind where I feel creeped the fuck out. And I'm angry. I'm angry that, you know, read the fucking room, man. Like, I don't know. I don't want to try to analyze like where his head was at or what was going on with him or like what his perspective is on this, is because I don't know and I can't know. And you know what? If he wants to talk about it, he can start his own damn podcast. But seriously, in all seriousness, I don't want to try to analyze like what the goings on of this boy's brain was in those moments. But what I do know is that he was too old for me. In fact, he was illegally too old for me. And he knew that. And he decided to have physical contact with me anyways. Not once, not twice, but a third time. And he ignored the signals that I was giving him. He ignored my obvious anxiety about it and chose to pursue me instead. I'm not proud of the fact that being pursued by him felt good. But I was a kid and he was a grown-up, so he should have known better. And I'm mad that he didn't, or that he did and he ignored it. Man, am I mad about that. Okay. I had to take a minute there. Oh, little Yoda. You poor sweet thing. Let's get back into the Corey of it all, shall we? Because this is a little bit happier. Okay, so just be aware. I'm about to gush. June 27th. It seems that each time me and Corey talk, we get closer. But the times in between our conversations are when I get worried about us and if we'll fade out. Can you say anxious attachment? But the good news is those time periods are getting shorter and less frequent. We cleared up a lot of the things that a while ago I was apprehensive about. Him thinking I was ugly, for example. And then in brackets, I wrote a quote from him which said, "You're pretty hot yourself." I also heard that Steve, you remember Steve, Nick Lachey from a few episodes ago, was talking trash about me and told Corey that I was a big square. If you're not a 90s baby, that was a term that boys used to say, to pressure girls into making out with them or touching their dicks. Oh, you're so square. You're such a prude. You're frigid. Like whatever it was. Basically, you're not a liberated woman with your own agency. I'm not going to get into it. Anyways, my grin right now is not like any one I've ever had. I don't know if it's because I'm gradually conquering a challenge, or if it's perhaps because I talked to a boy I like for 2.5 hours about Power Rangers and watermelons and chicken. Okay. Or maybe it's because Sarah and Elise aren't competition anymore. Or maybe it's because I'm just happy about talking to the guy of my dreams. I noticed tonight that Corey is the perfect mix of good and bad. He's got a good side, morals, he's polite, he's nice to girls, he seems innocent. But he's got a bad boy side too. He gets in some trouble, he smokes, he does fun stuff, he's had a threesome. Not gonna say anything. Maybe it's from hanging out with, I can't read that name. I think it says Graham. Anyways, it's a really good mix. Corey, man, I'm losing it. Okay. Tone it down, Yodes. All right. We need to get into some things that aren't just me swooning over boys. So there's a couple other sort of heavy things at play in this journal. No date on this one, but it's sometime in early July, I think, where I'm having some pretty negative thoughts and feelings when it comes to my relationship with my sister. I've mentioned her on the podcast a couple times. She's a huge part of my life when we're teenagers and a huge part of my life now. And she was ill for a lot of our childhood. She had, she just had a couple different illnesses, and she had a lot of demons herself. And one of the things that happened around this time was she developed a pretty severe eating disorder and lost a lot of weight. And I was also battling an eating disorder that just manifested in different ways. And I was really resentful of her now smaller size. And I wrote this. Tonight, you and me were talking about how I used to be the skinny one. As a baby, as a toddler, even as a kid. And now I look at you and we are the same size, and I hate it. And then in all caps, I wrote, I'll be skinny again. Wait and see. Another thing that's come up is the older boys that I've been hanging around with are moving on from our innocent, let's get drunk on weekends and smoke a lot of weed, to some harder things. And I think this is the first mention in any of my diaries of a hard drug, cocaine. I say, I had an all right time last night, even though it was a really early night. I saw, let's use the letter A. I saw A take 3 lines of coke right in front of my face. I don't really know if I want to get into that stuff. It seems really scary, but I guess controllable, 3 question marks, compared to how they show it on the movies and stuff. I don't know. So I'm faced with this kind of, like I said, picture me in this kind of tug of war, this older, more dangerous, grown-up life pulling on one side, and this desire to be young and a child kind of pulling me on the other side. And right in the middle of that, so on the one side, the part of me that's a child, that's tugging and saying, just stay here, stay a child. On that side, we have Jason, and we have my bestie, Katie, who I've talked about on the podcast. In some ways, my sister and my home life and school and, wanting to do good academically and being on the track team, and even Corey, because it feels so playful and we're young and innocent. And on the other side of that is these older boys that I'm hanging out with. My sister kind of lives there too, on both sides. We have drugs and alcohol and sex, and I'm starting to get into some trouble at school, and I'm fighting with my parents a lot. And it's just like a whole other world on this other side. And right in the middle of that, there's a catatonic bomb that's about to go off. And it's my parents. It's my parents. So it's mid-July, the summer of my going into grade 10. I'm 15. My sister's going into grade 12, and I have a party. It's a teenage party, but it's also a kid's party. There's pop and there's chips. later, there will be weed and alcohol, but we'll get to that. My parents agreed to let me throw a pool party for my best friend Katie for her birthday, which is in middle of July. I don't know why my parents agreed to this. This is very out of character for my parents because they were both so antisocial and kind of hated it when we had friends over. But they agreed. Or maybe I didn't ask them. I don't know. But it's a surprise party, and I'm so excited to be throwing it for Katie, who's been my best friend for like 7 years at this point. But the entry starts off not that great. It says, "I've never been so embarrassed in my whole entire life. I want to forget this feeling I have right now and totally abandon it and erase it from my mind, but I can't. It'll always be here. I'll never look at these people the same way again." Which is a very dramatic start for a not that like crazy of a story, but here we go. The party started off well. Matt came early and helped me set up. We were having fun riding on balloons and setting up the tents. Everyone else got here and we all just mingled and waited for Katie. She came at 6 and we all jumped out and she was so surprised. I'm glad she liked it and I hope she remembers that I threw her a surprise party. So the party went on from there. Jeff, Brad, Jesse, Sean, Mike, Bush, Sarah, Megan, Kevin, Jason, and Nathan were all here. Corey, Ben, and Jason A came later. The party was going well. We had a water balloon fight, exchanged presents, had pizza and cake, and then had a plate fight. We were swimming, and I liked the way Corey looked at me. He looked pleased. Mom called me into the house. She told me I better settle down because Dad was pissed and he called me a slut. Next, I went into the garage to confront him and he looked so angry. "How do you think it looks, one girl in a pool with 10 guys?" he asked and slammed the door in my face. It just hurt me so much. I think I'm entering the world of complex feelings, and I really don't think I'm ready. I went back outside, and it seemed like people were whispering about me, and I absolutely hated it. Corey and I went into the field for a cigarette. It was weird, but normal. I told him I loved his mohawk and that I wished he could stay overnight. I wanted to tell him my whole entire life story. Well, actually, I wanted to jump him right then and there. Okay, pause. I'm going to say what happened was my dad witnessed me cross the ledge from child to young woman, probably in a not very tasteful way. I'm sure I think I vaguely remember just like I think I pushed up my boobs or something and I was wearing a bikini top and the boys cheered or something like that. Something that I guess in the grand scheme of things was kind of provocative, but largely pretty innocent. I think it was this whole thing with my dad was actually a combination of him having a very hard time raising girls who were out exploring the world and getting into trouble and hanging out with older boys. He had every right to be concerned, but he didn't handle it very well. And the other thing that was at play was that my mom and my dad were fighting a lot and their marriage was on the rocks. So this was kind of displaced anger on my dad's part. But either way, my dad saw something he didn't like. He, I guess, had a fit inside, told my mom that I was acting like a slut. And then my mom told me, I confronted my dad, he slammed the door in my face. Pretty much everyone at the party kind of saw this, and then I was very embarrassed about it. So the drama continues. I have to introduce this next character because it's the first night that I met another love interest of mine named Dave. So here we go. It was weird feeling that for Corey all over again, because meeting this new Dave guy, I really wanted to get to know him too. I flirted with him all night, and we actually ended up having a really good, deep conversation. At one point, I was basically saying, fuck Corey. If he doesn't want to be with me, then why bother? But then Corey came over and we flirted under my blanket and got real cozy, and he smelled so good and felt so warm and laughed so sweetly. And then I wrote in brackets, it's weird how I trail off like that when I think about him. So it's pretty obvious what's happening here, right? Okay, so party goes on and eventually Corey leaves. And so me and Dave got stoned with Sarah and Jeff. He was the funniest motherfucker I've ever seen. We gave Jason a few hits and he made me promise not to tell anyone. It was so funny being baked with them. Everyone crashed in one tent. We had some fun. Sarah and I kissed. Next sentence. Mom says she's leaving Dad. I don't know if I believe her. It'd be so hard if Mom and Dad split. I don't know how I'd handle it. It was a weird night that I don't think I'll ever be even remotely reproducible. I kind of half want to jump around and call Corey and be happy, but the overpowering part of me just really wants to crawl into a hole and die. I feel like I owe some people an apology. Okay. So I am clearly like blaming myself for, what my dad said to me. And I think probably what's at play here is I am a little bit worried that I am to blame for this, rift in my parents' marriage. Obviously I wasn't, but I wrote a poem about this happening because it is like a core memory of mine, was like what I didn't write in my journal, but I have a core memory of, was like after the fight with my dad, I went to the backyard and like I felt like people were kind of like laughing at me or like talking about me. I'm sure they weren't, but it just felt like they were. And at some point I like walked around the house and like went up to the front of the house, and my mom was sitting on the porch, which was very unusual. This wasn't like a common scene for my mom. She was sitting on the porch and crying, and she had kind of like her elbows on her knees and her head in her hands, and she saw me. And as I was turning away, she called my name, and then she mouthed the words, "I'm leaving him." And I think that was actually the tipping point for me going from, okay, there is no more childhood left. Like, there's no more childhood left. It's just now I'm a grown-up. And it was a really heartbreaking memory for me, and I still feel really pissed off at my mom for saying that to a 15-year-old, putting that on me, for them both of my parents for not protecting me from that, even though in hindsight I know that they actually tried for years to protect me and my sister from their drama. But I think we were all at a breaking point. My dad certainly was. My mom certainly was, and I'm about to be. So I wrote this poem as an adult, like in recent years, that I called Pool Party. I was throwing a surprise party for my best friend. My parents probably didn't want all these hormones around. I was desperate to impress a boy I liked, said something to draw attention to my breasts. I heard yelling from the front of the house, so I went, chlorine-drenched, shivering. I wanted to stay a kid, but Mom and Dad had other plans. My mother mouthed, "I'm leaving him." Did they decide in that moment that my childhood was over? Or did I? So yeah, pretty heartbreaking moment and memory all around. So I would say that after the pool party, I have a bit of a rough time. There's one entry right after that where I fill the entire page with capital letters just saying, why am I so ugly? I'm disgusting, always tired looking, always bloated, every day is a bad hair day. But I actually get into how I'm feeling, and just my anxiety on the page, where I just start the page with, I feel awful for some reason. Kelly, Jenny, A, moving farther from everyone, being lonely, losing Corey, never having Corey, Katie's party, missing out, being excluded, mom being mad at me being mad at dad, not seeing Amanda, having to go back to work. I could fill pages, and maybe that's the problem. So yeah, I'm definitely, I wouldn't say I'm having a great time. And I think things at home at this point are just getting really, really rough. A couple entries later, I say, so after we got home, Jenny and I just chilled in my room. It was different because we weren't laughing and shouting. We were whispering. We were talking about mom and dad, how mom said that she'd be willing to move out, how dad wouldn't be able to keep the house, so we'd have to leave our whole lives behind. Things are changing faster than I can think about how to order them. So welcome to the summer of chaos. We are entering a very tumultuous time in my young life. Buckle up. The rest of this journal is just me absolutely obsessing, and I don't use that word lightly, about Corey and other boys and the fact that I'm going back to school for 10th grade. I am fairly constantly writing poems to Corey, writing him letters. A lot of conversations with friends where it's him telling a friend that he likes me, he's going to ask me out, but then it never happens. I'm starting to get weary and anxious, thinking I should move on, but can't. I'm just like very, very, very into this fella. Before I get into that, two other things happen. One, I go to SARS stock, which, if you were a teenager then, it was a very big deal. SARS stock was this massive concert in Toronto. They had almost 500,000 people attend, and it was in this big outdoor park in Toronto, and it was one of the first concerts I ever went to. I went with my sister and my dad. We saw AC/DC and the Rolling Stones. Also Justin Timberlake was there, which was weird, I think. Highlight of my summer. My entry just says the concert was great, waking up early, walking for hours, waiting in line, sunburning, being hungry and thirsty, and sitting in a sea of people was totally worth it. Great day to remember forever. So that's thing one. Thing two is that I do ecstasy for my first time. July 25th, I say, I did a bad thing last night. Instead of going to Jay's, having the usual fun, smoking weed, laughing, and having a few beers, I took E before I got there. I had a few really bad trips and had a horrible time, and I think people could tell there was something wrong because I kept shaking and acting stupid. Things were supposed to be normal last night, and I made them weird. So I take ecstasy before a party, and then I regret it because it made me shaky and just like act strange. This is going to be a trend. Foreshadowing, this is going to be a trend. So the rest of the diary really is just me pining over Corey for the rest of July, the rest of August, and then I, again, straddling that line between being a child, being a kid who's just having a fun summer with her friends, and struggling with average kid things, anxiety about going to school, fighting with your parents, all that. And then on the other side of this line is, doing grown-up things with grown-up people, my parents' marriage rupture getting wider, some of my OCD stuff flaring up, some of my ED stuff flaring up, and getting into some harder drugs at the same time. By the end of this diary, it ends in early September of 2003, and I have just started 10th grade. I am still pining over Corey. I'm getting into some harder drugs. I'm about to... I'm like, do I want to spoil it? I'm about to meet someone who is incredibly influential on the next couple years of my life, and will be the subject of the next several diaries. And it's not Corey B. But here's a poem that I wrote for Corey. I'm going to end this episode here. Love poem. I hardly know you, yet I feel I know everything. It scares me because you don't know the happiness you bring. That if you could make me happy, could you not make me just as sad? It's strange because since I've met you, you've been in every single dream I've had. And out of 101 boys, none have ever made me feel this way. And even though you're not even gone, I miss you more with each passing day. Even though you think you're flawed, all of those things make you shine. And all of those things you hate about yourself, those are the reasons I want you to be mine. No matter how much I've lied in my past, what I'm about to say is true. That I'll wait forever to be had by you. Wowza. I actually think that poem's pretty good. All right, everybody. I had a fantastic time reading this journal and spending time with you. I've got 2 episodes coming out this month and can't wait to get into the next section of diaries. I'll tell you that grade 10, 11, 12, man, so much happens. I don't quite know how I survived it. I don't know how any of us did. I'm nervous. I'm nervous to share, but more so, I'm actually nervous to read. Nervous to find out, what really happened as opposed to what my memory is of what happened. And, so far those experiences have been different. So thanks so much for going on the journey with me. I've loved being on this journey with you. Thank you so much for all the kind emails and messages. If you are somebody who wants to start journaling or developing a writing practice, I am a writing coach and I help people write every single day. You can find me at www.doulaofwords.com. Stay safe out there and have an awesome rest of your October. Bye.